Dear students, we are beginning our new academic year with not great pomp, but maybe with a distance. Still, we have to start our fifth semester, and you are welcome to the fifth semester. In the fifth semester, you have a number of papers, and one better than the other. This is to get to know literature in all its depth and in all its beauty. In order to appreciate the beauty of literature, it's not enough that you learn prose, poetry, drama, or even criticism. Criticism is okay. But we have to know why these types of genre are there and what are the new modes of appreciation of literature and what are the new things that are there in literature. All these we have to learn, and this is why we have a paper called The Methodology of Literature. Why should we learn the methodology of literature? That's a question for which you get the answers in 4 different sections. These 4 sections deal with the different aspects, starting from the history of English literature to literatures of other country which were still in English, and also to the different aspects of literature. Because, for example, if I say that feminism was there in literature, and feminism really contributed much to the development of literature, though it was maybe a social movement, it had its impact in literature also. This is why feminism is also included in the study of methodology of literature. The portion that I have to deal with are the last 2 topics, and the first one is about marginalization. You find that marginalization is again a word that has come to be used lately in the sense that lately in Indian literature or in the Indian scenario, because we are several years back even with the internet also, we are several years back from the world literature. So naturally marginalization is a word that has been used by people in the Western countries and the world over. But in India, you find the word being used to a minimum of maybe recently. But we know that there was much rapid development, and that development is something that we have to learn about. So the question is, why the word marginalization? We know that something that is put in the margins is something that is overlooked. We give our importance to the main body that is there. Suppose, for example, we take a paper, you put a margin and then you write your answers in your paper. This is something that we commonly use, and we know that this type is something that you have been instructed from the very early days on. That is, you have to have a margin for the paper and then write your answer in the other part. So the margin is left only for numbering, and the main body of your answer is there in the other side, and it is that the examiner will look. Maybe he will refer to what is put in the margin just for the sake of it, just to see if it is the right question number or not. So also is with the word marginalization. You find that you have been taught or instructed from the very early days onwards that this is so, this is not so, this is this way, this is not that way, this is the way to write, this is the way not to write, and things like that. So naturally we have a concept of what is to be done to be a proper ordinary citizen of the world. So we come to regard certain items as being out of that periphery, and so naturally you have to have a different vision or attitude towards that. For example, you have a lot of people, you are now speaking about the LGBT or even the transgenders and people like that, and even now you have been taught that heterosexuality is the norm and all other things are looked on with a little bit of doubt, confusion, frown, and sometimes downright anger. And those people were pushed to one side. They were pushed to the margins. They are not part of the main body or main aspect. And even in society also we have been trained like that. So you can't blame ourselves for being like that, means having an attitude like that. So you feel that these are the people who have been pushed to one side. Among them you find Dalits also. For a long time women were also pushed to the margins and they were not even heard. They are to be seen as decorative and to be seen only as decorations, and they are to be fade to the background. And so naturally the women came to the forefront. There was much revolution and feminism came to the world, and along with feminism you find a lot of developments. Equality for women, then gender studies, all these came into existence. You find that earlier it was Marxism who paved the way for all these. But after some time it was post-modernism, that is, that which came after modernism, that contributed much to the development of these marginalized groups. You find them everywhere and in all culture and in all aspects of life, and not just people but also certain categories, and it is these categories that are called or labeled as marginalized groups. You find them in everywhere. You have Dalits in the society, then you have the lesbians, the homosexuals, all these are there, the marginalized group. You have also the women earlier as part of the marginalized group, but now they are not. So in a way you find that this marginalized group contributed much to the development, and you find some of them included even religion wise, class wise, caste, behavior, and many other things. All these types are now labeled as marginalized. So why are we speaking about marginalized groups? There is a reason. The reason is that they are also voicing their feelings, and so their writings have a vehemence, a kind of vulnerability, which we should read and understand in order to understand them properly. This is why those that have written about themselves were included as part of literature. And this is why we have a totally different type of literature other than prose, poetry, drama, and even criticism. Earlier, you remember, I have told you, I think I have told you in your class while you were in the second semester, semester, about the reason why we had drama as a late development. Prose was also another late development. Poetry was the only norm. If you want to write something, then you have to write it as compose a poem, or compose it as a poem or as a verse. So when you speak about Geoffrey Chaucer and his Canterbury Tales, you expect those stories, tales means stories, you expect those stories to be in prose, because in the modern sense tales or stories are written in prose. But Canterbury Tales was written not in prose but in poetry or verse form. This is why I told you that poetry was the earliest of origins, and whatever that you have to write should be written in poetry, and anything less than that is considered to be below dignity or not up to the standard of literature. So prose was looked contemptuously down by the others, and if you want to write a drama, then you can write a drama, of course, but the only thing is that the characters must speak poetic lines, and if you are a dramatist, naturally you have to compose those poetic lines. And if you write prose in between, as Shakespeare had written occasionally, these words of prose were used by low characters or characters who were of not much importance to the main theme of the drama. You find them speaking in prose. That is okay. But the noble characters or the main characters are to speak only prose. So this kind of a demarcation was there with literature even from the very early times. If demarcation was there in literature, such demarcation was quite evident in the society also. We know in India that we have the different caste system, and we know the grade of these caste and these people belonging to the caste, that is the upper caste and the lower caste. Even though we have divided it as such, you find that there is untouchability connected to the lower caste, and they can't, or whatever that they touch will not be touched by the upper class people. So these people were pushed to the margin, or maybe they were pushed beyond the margin, I must say, because they have their use and they are restricted only to that particular use, and they have no voice at all. They can't speak, they can't write, their literature is not up to the point. So naturally they were not regarded as people worthy to be included in the main form of society, and to think that whatever that they have written should be included as part of literature, totally hilarious, because it is unheard of. They were not given education, they were not given anything, and they were just workers, and this was the condition of the marginalized people. But with the development of education, with the development of changes in the world, as I told you earlier, these changes after modernism, these changes and the downfall of colonialism also contributed much to the development of education. And even during the colonial period also, you had much to speak of, or education to speak of. So here you find a group of people who were not acknowledged by the society, the so-called society, but at the same time they have this overwhelming desire to express themselves. So naturally they started writing, and with their meager education, their writing were not up to the standard of the writing of the textbooks. Maybe they wrote in their spoken language. So when you start writing in their spoken language, it has got a dialectical variation. Like for example, when we speak, we don't speak bookish English or bookish Malayalam. We speak the dialect of the area in which we are living. For example, if we are a Trishurian, naturally Trishur Malayalam is famous, and you speak that. And if you are from the either from the north or the south, you speak in that particular dialect. So whatever that is there in the book is for the book. So when these people started writing, their language was more dialectic, and they have no idea of the bookish language. So naturally, so these were included in the book as such, and it became a trend to print it in the dialect itself. Exactly what the postmodernists wanted, because through the presentation of the literature of the marginalized, they really wanted to lead us to a totally different culture, or to get to know a totally different culture. You find that in Malayalam there is a novel called Nadugadhiga. It is by Mr. Baby, who had been working with the earliest Adivasis of Wayanad, and he had written a drama in their language, and you find it very difficult to understand that language. but it is one of the translated versions. It is translated to English, and it is one of the textbooks for PG English literature. This is development because postmodernism had brought about such changes and such acceptability to literature. Mind you, we are learning English literature, and you have a book which is translated from Malayalam, or the so-called Malayalam of the Adivasis, to English, and we are learning that, which shows that that kind of change is necessary. And even though it is translated to English, when you start reading it in Malayalam itself, you find it very difficult to understand that it is Malayalam, because it's not the proper Malayalam that you speak. It's not the proper Malayalam that you read in your Malayalam textbooks. It is a totally different version, totally different language, and some words you don't understand because it's not Malayalam but the language that they use. And the author gives proper directions as to what is the meaning of those words, and what do they mean by that, and things like that. You find prose and also poems because they have a sing-song voice, and some of them sing and rather than speak. And because of that, you find that included in the PG section or syllabus, and we learn that and get enriched by the knowledge that these marginalized people also have a culture of their own, and it is that culture which needs to be developed. In the same manner, you find that this marginalization includes gender, ethnicity, and the subaltern. Gender, of course, you find feminism, which has paved the way for a large number of developments and a great deal of development. And at the same time, people, if you are studying here in the college along with the boys, it means that you have to be grateful to a lot of feminists who really fought their way through the world. We didn't have the voting rights earlier, especially in England. Women were regarded as not worthy to vote. They are worthy to be photographed. They are worthy to be there dressed up as a companion. They are worthy to be the mothers and to look after. But at the same time, they are considered to be not worthy to be the one person to elect a leader for themselves. Which means that politics is an arena which was denied to women. And so there was the suffragette movement, where women started for the voting rights, and you learn about in your history lessons. So after the suffragette movement, women started coming up, and this started spreading over not just to England but also to America, to Europe, and to all other parts of the world. And they also started dressing up like men. And again, you find much development with the World War, when women were considered to be, if you are a nurse, then there is a stigma attached to nursing. And this stigma was removed when Florence Nightingale came over and took up the leadership, trained a lot of girls under her, and trained them to look after the soldiers, to care for their wounds, but at the same time have a dignity of their own, and make nursing one of the most prestigious profession in the world. If it is considered to be a most prestigious profession in the world, then you have to thank Florence Nightingale for that. All these trends, because they were also marginalized, because nursing was not done properly and there was no organized way of training them. The midwives took care of that. Most of them were drunk, and naturally this is why there is a notoriety connected to nursing at that time. And so there was someone coming up to bring them to the mainstream and make them really dignified like any other human being, and regard nursing as one of the most dignified professions of the world, because we need nursing and we need nurses. Because you can't imagine a hospital. Of course you are a doctor has got a lot of dignity, But what about a hospital with only the doctors, with not the nurses? If you are bedridden, naturally you need the help of nursing assistants or assistants. In the same manner, all these marginalized groups have their own way of expressing themselves, and two things really happened, and one is Marxism and the other is post-colonialism or even postmodernism. And it is these two which really brought about marginalization to the forefront. Dear students, this is just an introduction to the section 3 that I am going to deal with, and in the other sessions you are going to learn a lot about all these ethnic groups, all these genders and all the subaltern. I hope you are going to have a good time, and if you have a text, just go through it. Don't read it as a text that you have to study, but read it like something like absorbing the novel, like reading a novel, and you will really enjoy that. I hope you are having a good time at home, and please go through the introduction. Thank you.